What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. I think it's pretty fair to say that a lot of you guys are going to know by now that the League of Legends beta champions were pretty darn overpowered, but there's actually a lot more reasons behind it than just that Riot kind of used to suck at balancing. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to maybe take a look at exactly why the League of Legends champions were so ridiculously overpowered during beta. So if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button, and if you don't enjoy the video, feel free to hit that dislike button too, and let's get right into it. So we'll start off with the biggest factor that comes into play, which is the foundation that League of Legends was built upon. You know, the MOBA genre really kicked off when the modder Aeon64 made a custom map for StarCraft with the name of Aeon of Strife, featuring the 3 iconic lanes that have come to be the standard for MOBA games as a whole. And Dota, or Defense of the Ancients, was actually a conversion of Aeon of Strife from the StarCraft engine into the Warcraft 3 engine, with the addition of elements from the tower defense genre and refinements to the mod by well-known figures such as Ginsu and IceFrog, of course. What was left was a complex and innovative gameplay experience. And when Riot Games developed League of Legends, the most obvious starting point, their big inspiration, was the original Dota mod, especially when you consider that Ginsu was one of the main figureheads of the Riot development team. And as members of Riot had already been so significantly involved in the development of Dota, and realized from a gameplay perspective that Dota as a whole was pretty solid already, so Riot started creating their own original champions, but the power levels of those champions were actually more or less equivalent, or at least based on the design of those Dota heroes, and as a result, the numbers that they were tuned to were the foundation of the game. So essentially, if you took one of the alpha or beta champion releases and plopped it straight into Dota, it actually wouldn't necessarily be all that out of place. Like, they wouldn't deal too much or too little damage. The numbers would actually be relatively similar. But as we can see from Dota's gameplay style, although the power level of a single hero might be higher than the champions in League of Legends, it's still relatively well balanced. So you kind of have to wonder why the beta champions in League ended up being so damn broken. And there's really one major answer to that question: summoner spells. During League of Legends' development, Riot really worked hard to find a lot of ways that would build on the gameplay style and offer something more customizable to players that would help differentiate League of Legends and Dota and make them play out a lot differently. And they came up with the idea of summoner spells with that aim in mind, with the idea that it would allow players to develop new strategies, build on champion strengths, or to help make up for some weaknesses. And although summoner spells were really well received and a much loved part of the game today, the issue was that those champions were never designed to have access to those sort of tools. So when they all of a sudden had access to them, it gave everyone this insane power boost, and as a result, they became enormously overpowered. Think about it kind of like this, you know, when Riot designs a champion, they talk a lot about that champion's power budget. This is the reason that certain champions have maybe really insane ultimates, but like a weaker kid, and vice versa. Take Blitzcrank, for example. His ultimate isn't, you know, awful, I guess, but it's definitely not a game changer compared to some other ultimates, and with really good reason. Most of his power budget has gone to his insanely strong rocket grab. On the other hand, you have champions like maybe Malphite or Amumu, who can dominate an entire fight with just a single press of their ultimate, so the rest of their kits are a little bit less powerful as a result. And Riot assigns the same, or at least tries to assign the same, power budget to every champion nowadays, and the only thing that really changes is the distribution of that power throughout the kit. And in the beta phase of League of Legends, League champions were designed with a power budget that was a lot similar to that of Dota heroes, hence why they could have probably slotted into Dota without that much of an issue. Now the problem arises when summoner spells are brought into that picture. Once you add summoner spells into the mix, you're left with champions as strong as Dota heroes, but with even more customizable power on top of their own kits, resulting in really just every champion becoming stupidly overpowered. The summoner spell effects themselves were based on active items that were originally from Dota, but making them available 100% for free made them super overtuned, and every summoner spell was pretty overpowered because of it, really. And this is the main reason that beta champions were so damn strong. You know, they were just never designed with the added power of summoner spells in mind originally, so when they all of a sudden had access to those tools, they just became unstoppable. You know, take Flash for example, especially which can enable a powerful but immobile champion to maybe escape a fight if they position badly, or give Twisted Fate away to instantly get into range to land his AoE stun onto the enemy team or something. The reason this doesn't happen anymore is because Riot keeps the added power from summoner spells in mind when they power budget their champions. If you took the power budget from a beta champion and removed the power of summoner spells, you're left with a much more reasonable amount of power that you can safely put on the kit of a newer champion who has access to summoner spells without making them too crazy overpowered in game. Now, although the introduction of summoner spells were the main thing that made the beta champions overpowered, they were already way stronger than they are now, thanks to just being based on Dota heroes. The raw power that they had in their mechanics and ratios were really just so off the charts, because that's kind of just how it is in Dota. Although spells had longer cooldowns and also cost a lot more mana, the overpowered nature of them drastically overshadowed the downsides for sure, and as a result the champions found much more strength in a game that was designed to be faster paced and definitely snowballed a lot harder. Instead of having longer trades in lane and battles of attrition, Riot ended up with League being a game of whoever lands the big combo first, because you can bet all that crowd control is going to be followed up with some crazy damage and an instant death. And this effect snowballed players ahead in golden experience, in turn raising their power more and making the game almost a coin flip at times. And once you got that first set of kills, you really just snowballed out of control. And the snowball effect from faster paced gameplay brings us to our next point. After all, you do have to have something to spend all that gold on. And of course, I'm talking about the items, which were designed from the ground up to be a lot more power spiky than they are today. Getting items was designed to be a massive turning point, where a player could have way more impact on the game when they got one, and as a result the items themselves were a lot more overpowered than they are now, once again easily comparable to the power levels of Dota items. They were a lot more expensive and did take longer to get thanks to, overall at the time, a lower passive gold gain and lower gold from farming minions and getting assists, but they definitely still had a ton more power for the cost, way more than the gold efficiency that you get out of an item today. The items also had all their own just insane active abilities as well, so on top of the free summoner spells you also gained much more powerful active effects to use once you picked up your first item or two, so players had access to much more power for item for the gold than they otherwise would have today. A 6-item build back in beta was just so terrifying and is just so insane to the power levels of champions today. The amount of power was just so game breaking, and it really was kind of just a race to see whoever got to that point first, assuming the game actually lasted that long in the first place. In the current game, early kills won't necessarily decide the outcome, because assists will definitely distribute the gold to your team, help promote some team play, and there's a lot more objective focus and stuff, and you could just choose to maybe farm up, out CS your opponent, and get some quicker access to items yourself, even if you happen to be losing on kills. But back in beta, kills were by far the easiest way to get gold, which meant that players were picking up kills, getting their items a lot quicker, and overall the game was a lot more snowbally because the first item pickups just caused champions to power spike so hard that they would really just become unstoppable. Another point also worth considering is that, being based on Dota, League was actually originally intended to have minion denial as a mechanic, which was removed during the second week of the alpha phase. And this is definitely one of the reasons why the items had been so strong for their cost, because minion denial would theoretically slow down the rate at which players would gain gold, so items needed to be cheaper to offset that mechanic instead. Once minion denial was removed, to further distinguish League from Dota, the items didn't really change, if at all, to compensate for that, so you were left with some super powerful and comparatively cheap items that would get picked up relatively quickly by players for an early lead, and games would become crazy one-sided snowball fests. Either way though, that's actually just about going to wrap up everything we know about the beta champions and really just why they were so overpowered. We do definitely talk about beta champions quite a lot, so it does make sense to explain what it was that resulted in that power level in the first place, and it turns out it does go a little bit deeper than Riot just being bad at balancing at the time. Either way though, definitely let us know in the comments section below what you thought about the beta champions. And it looks like that's going to be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.